Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another edition of Into the Fray. First, thanks for being here. If you enjoy ITF, please rate and review it in Apple Podcasts. This helps others find it, which turns into more people with encounters for me to interview. If you'd like more content than the free weekly edition, go to intothefrayradio.com and click Become an Insider. It's only $4.99 a month or $54 for an entire year. And if you have an encounter you'd like to share, email me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com. If you've got shorter stories, feel free to call the hotline, 877-317-9111. You can call that anytime, toll free. My first book, Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, co-authored with best-selling author G. Michael Hoff, is available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle editions. Once you're finished, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. For signed and personalized copies, send $19.99 via PayPal, free shipping within the U.S. only, to BeyondTheFrayLLC@gmail.com. Besides Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, we now have Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation up for pre-order on Amazon right now. As hinted in the title, of course, it is paranormal stories. All kinds of them. It is an amalgamation. They are extremely difficult to classify in any one category of the paranormal. What is wonderful about this book, it is some of my favorites from the show, plus many will be included that you will have not heard on the show. And if you have any encounters that you'd like in an upcoming volume of Beyond the Fray, shoot me an email, shannon@intothefrayradio.com, or you can even just open your smartphone, talk into any kind of recording app, and email me that file. Be as detailed as you can in your story, of course. Any questions? Again, just email me, shannon@intothefrayradio.com. And last but not least, Jeff and I have created Beyond the Fray Publishing. So, if you've got a book you'd like us to publish for you, send us an email at info@beyondthefraypublishing.com. For general questions and information on us, visit our website, beyondthefraypublishing.com. Books we consider will need to be in the genres cryptid, paranormal, or true crime, both fiction and nonfiction. Thanks again, and that will do it for now. So, on to the show. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I appreciate you doing that. So, however you wanted to start out, but I did pull up some of your older emails. And I still do have that shadow cat drawing, by the way, which is very good. If I tried to draw a cat, it would look like some horrific stick figure, and you wouldn't even be able to tell it was a cat. So, but I know that your experiences, you remember some things from your childhood, right?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I didn't remember them until I started listening to, actually started this job as a night delivery driver, driving a semi-truck on a delivery route, and just started, one night just decided, hey, let me scan the radio channels and see if I can pick up, at the time when I called it like the crackpot alien conspiracy paranormal radio channel, and I found Coast to Coast.
Mm-hmm. And
that was the first time I ever had listened to the show. And as I was listening to it, it kind of started bringing it up as I was hearing other guests on there it started bringing up like memories. Like, wait, well, this guy talked about this. Like, wait a minute, I think I had an encounter like that. So I just started bringing up memories from my past.
So what sorts of things were you remembering?
Well, when I was, I think 8 or 9, I kind of remember seeing 2 different type of shadow things in my family home. And this is an old farmhouse that's been in my family for generations. It was like built back in 1907. And it's like every generation has lived in this home.
Did other members of your family have any sightings or experiences in that home?
None that I've heard of. And a lot of them that I've kind of talked to, they're kind of on the fence. Some don't really believe in this stuff, or they just won't admit it. So I tried to talk to them a little bit, though. My grandmother, my last living grandmother, she did talk about when I visited them for Christmas this year, that she was having what she felt like, somebody was sitting on the bed while she was sleeping, or she was feeling presence in her bedroom. And she said she was feeling like it might have been her dead husband or one of her deceased relatives visiting her. And then she was also joking that she had a possessed balloon that was following her around the house.
Oh gosh, that's creepy. How is that working out? What did she describe that as being like?
Well, it was a Mylar balloon that had survived from her birthday in October. And it was just about dead. It was only floating a few feet off the ground out of the bunch she had gotten. And and she was joking, it might have been the air conditioning blowing it around, but she'd find it would float into different rooms in the house. And sometimes it would follow her into a room after she'd gone into it. So she was always joking like, oh, this balloon is, haunted or possessed, or it's following me, in a joking way. She was never fearful of it. And she always was a little reverent about it, saying, this balloon was just acting weird because it was from her birthday, the last one. And just how it seemed to have a mind of its own, how she'd come into the living room and it would be there. She'd go into the kitchen, come back, it'd be gone, into one of the rooms. She'd go back in the kitchen, come back, and it had floated back into the living room.
So she was gone before her next birthday?
No, she's still here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You said I took it as her last birthday, like her last one. You just mean her last year's birthday. Okay, sorry. Grandma's still here.
Your last birthday in October.
Gotcha.
Yeah, though we don't know how much longer she will be here, because she did just overcome a severe form of breast cancer.
She's a fighter then.
So it's one of those.
She's tough.
Yeah, she definitely is.
So the shadow things that you saw in the farmhouse, and what state was this, by the way? Do you mind mentioning that?
It's in Utah.
Utah, awesome. It's one of my favorite states, as you know. That's where I saw my shadow beings. So what did your shadow beings look like?
Well, the first one kind of looked, I guess, like a typical shadow. It was about 3 to 4 feet tall, and I think closer to the 3 foot. And it just kind of looked more just like the humanoid shape with no real defined features. Because I was in my parents' bedroom at that time, and I was watching the TV, and I was probably watching something, because we didn't have cable, but I was watching something I probably shouldn't, like either like Unsolved Mysteries or something that the rest of the family was watching downstairs, and I was up there. Because I remember seeing something out of the corner of my eye, and as I was turning my head, I saw it in like 3/4 perspective, and as I got into full perspective, I saw it like turn and run towards into where my sister's bedrooms were. But being 8 or 9, I really didn't know what I had seen, because I didn't know what shadow people were at that time.
Right.
And it was just like, what was that? Okay. It was, I went out and looked, couldn't see anything in my sister's bedroom. And so I thought, okay, maybe it was a trick of the light.
Yeah, being the first one, you probably were, it was a little easier to go, okay, well, maybe, like you said, trick of the light, no big deal. But then it happens again. Yeah,
and the second one was a bit different, because I was downstairs in our living room, and I was the only one in the living room. And I was hearing noises upstairs, which I first thought at the time that it was my sister's. And our staircase that went up to the upstairs, because this was before we remodeled and added on a big extension to the house. The stairs there were, like, since it's an old farmhouse, you can't go up the stairs or down the stairs without them creaking. And I remember the chair I was sitting in, I couldn't look up the stairs, but I can remember hearing them creaking like something was coming down. So that drew my attention to look over to the stairs, and what little bit I could see. And what I saw kind of coming down at the very end looked like a shadow hula hoop come rolling down the stairs, and it continued down the stairs and into the floor.
I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like that before. Excuse me. So a shadow hula hoop.
Yeah, that just kind of drew my attention, and it was like same thing. It's like I didn't know what it was. Did I think I saw what I saw? Because I mean, I really wasn't into all the paranormal stuff. I mean, I liked watching unsolved mysteries, but again, I didn't know what shadow people were, because I knew kind of maybe a little bit about ghost activity, but it's like, ghosts were invisible. You didn't see them. Right.
So it went all the way down the stairs and then disappeared on the first floor, into the floor.
Into the floor, correct.
Yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah, and that was the last time I saw any shadow people in the house.
So what was the next thing then for you?
Let's see. I think then it wasn't until I was older, and it was about, I think like 2013, when I had left North Dakota oil field and had moved into this apartment that me and my friends that live up here in Montana had lovingly referred to as the chicken coop apartment.
Why is that?
Well, because it actually was an old chicken coop that was refurbished into 2 apartments.
Interesting.
And it was kind of in the middle of a field, so you had to go along. I mean, it wasn't a very long dirt road, but it was go through this field to get to it. Because the old farmer that used to own the property, him and his kids had remodeled the chicken coop, and he lived in the apartment that I was renting. And I can't remember if he had passed away in it, but I know that he had died a few years ago. And I remember as I was staying in that apartment, I didn't see them all the time, but a lot of times I would, it happened maybe like once or twice a week or every few months. I would wake up in the middle of the night because, I would hear a noise, or just wake up and have that feeling that something was in the room with me. And, I have to say that I didn't know why that was happening or why I was doing that. And I would get this weird impression, kind of like my mind would give kind of like a picture of the room. And I would see something standing in the doorway to my room. And it would be like a tall, dark shadow figure. And this one actually had kind of defined features that I could see within the shadow.
What were the defined features?
Well, at first, the best way I could describe him, he was or I don't know why I always say a he to it, but I always say that he looked like Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas, but with just a normal size head, just a very tall, skinny, lanky body. But I mean, at first it was just like the dark outline, but as it kept coming back to me every now and then, I could see like the eyes in it, and they were kind of more like opal shape. And I think the gentleman you had on last week, Robert, when he was describing the machine elves and their eyes, how they were like how the Egyptians did. I think that's how he described them, painted their eyes with the
right.
Because that's that I've never told anyone about the eyes for my nighttime shadow guy, but that's how his eyes were. But they were, and I don't know. It was hard. I don't know how to explain, but they were also like dark black, even with inside the blackness of the shadow.
Right, blacker than the black.
Yes.
Did you feel like it would interact with you, or did you move or speak at it or anything?
Well, and at that time, I had heard about shadow people, but I didn't know that they could have a form to them. I thought they were still more that formless shape from what I had seen from like paranormal ghost hunter videos and stuff like that. I didn't know that they could actually have a form. And also, I'd also thought it was just my subconscious just playing tricks on me when I would wake up at night, because my subconscious sometimes would, I called it a jerk sometimes, because when I would go to bed and I'd be on that verge of going to almost asleep, but not quite awake, because I used to love to watch horror movies, but since I started this job work at nights, I've had to stop watching them because I have a very active imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Because my subconscious, when I'd start about falling asleep, it would start going through hey, you remember that one movie that really scared the piss out of you? Let's start thinking about that creature and replaying that scene in the movie.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what I
how
thought.
Our brains work, isn't it? It's like, thanks so much.
Oh,
Appreciate
yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's like, I was just about to sleep, and now you woke me up. Now I can't go to sleep because I can't stop thinking about that creature in the movie.
So
that's why I kept thinking what that was, what the shadow thing was.
Right. But did you ever, are you 100% positive that you were awake and saw that it wasn't just a part of your dream?
I was pretty sure I was awake, because I'd actually I would sit up in bed, look at the doorway, but I wouldn't really see anything there. Or I would turn on the light and I wouldn't see anything, but it was like as if it had stepped out of the doorway, so I wouldn't see it. And there were other times when I would actually wake up and I would have the sleep paralysis. And kind of the way that sometimes when I'd wake up, I'd have that same impression that something was in the room with me, and I'd feel that it was right next to the bed. And I don't know why, but when I would feel that, it's like, okay, I'm looking the opposite direction of it. I'm going to roll over real fast, yell boo, and try to catch it. But that's when I would find that I couldn't move.
So how many times did you have the sleep paralysis? I'm
going to say up until, I think, the January of 2018. I think it would average anywhere from 4 to 6 times a year.
Okay.
But since then, I haven't had a sleep paralysis since January of 2018.
Isn't that strange how some
and that's
things
also the last.
What's that?
Oh, and that's the last time that I've seen or had any activity from the humanoid shadow people.
Well, it's strange how all that was almost tied together and then stopped together then.
Yeah.
So, but not all of your encounters did happen in your bedroom while you were asleep. In one of the emails you sent me, you mentioned the thing in the farmer's driveway. Do you mind covering that?
Sure. Yeah, that's when, I think that was 2015, and that was shortly after I had started this night delivery job, I think about 4 or 5 months into it. And I was doing the route, and I drive the exact same roads every night to the same stores. So I knew the route pretty well by then. And it was in the fall, and up here in Montana, that's when the deer rut starts, and they get pretty stupid about then. And so I was definitely looking at the side of the roads as I was driving, because my route goes through a lot of rural Montana into a lot of the small towns. So in this area was in the farmland. And so, I mean, there was a lot of deer, and sad thing is, I'd see a new deer carcass on the side of the road almost every night.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was driving at I was coming up on the one farmhouse, and it was like a typical farmhouse that you might see in a movie, the farmhouse with the big pole with kind of the street lamp on it flooding the driveway. And it was only a few hundred feet from the road. So there was, a good amount of light coming from the farmhouse out onto the street I was driving on. And as I was coming up onto it, I noticed something in the very edge of my headlights. And I was the only one on the road, so I had my high beams on. So once I spotted whatever it was, that immediately drew my attention, because like I said, it was during the deer rut season. So I'm looking for anything on the side of the road. So as I'm getting closer, I can see it's like, okay, that's not a deer. It first looks like maybe a very big dog sitting in the middle of the farmer's driveway where the dirt meets the asphalt. And so as I'm driving, I'm, thinking, oh, please don't come run out in front of me or decide to chase me. But as I'm getting closer to it, it looks like it's starting to get up. It's like, oh great, there's my worst fear. I don't want to have this thing run out and me hit it. But as it's getting up, it starts to morph or change. Because even when a dog gets up, it gets up on its four legs. But as this thing got up, it changed from a dog shape into what looked like a gigantic ball on top of two legs. And best way I could describe it is like if you've seen the Pixar Monster Inc. movie, it looked like Mike Wazowski.
The guy with the one eyeball, right? He's like the other half of the team there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it kind of looked like, except its legs were a little bit thicker than his.
Mm.
And I had and I've even counted off, the distance. I had about 5 seconds as I drove by it to see it do this. And as I drove by, of course, once I passed it, it's like that dog just turned into a ball on legs. Again, I'm like, did I just see what I think I saw? Because, on this road, I didn't have any place to pull over. Of course, I really didn't want to pull over if I saw something unusual. And I kept on driving. And I decided, well, maybe it was the headlights catching some debris on the side of the road, some bushes. Like, okay, I'll look again tomorrow night and see if I can reproduce that shadow. And, the next night, there was no dog shadow or whatever in the driveway. I couldn't reproduce it. But as I drove by and I saw my headlights hit other objects and the shadow would morph and change, it made me think back. My headlights didn't make the shadow elongate or cascade from whatever that dog creature was. It was a solid, dark object sitting plainly in the middle of the farmer's driveway, kind of like looking out onto the asphalt street that I was on. And that's the only time I've ever seen that in the 5 years I've been doing this job.
It's such a strange one-off thing to see, right?
Yeah. And this was also before I had even started going back and starting listening to Coast to Coast or any of the paranormal podcasts. So that wouldn't even have been on my mind to think or look for those type of things. Because I've seen plenty of other animals as I've been driving. And when you hit them with the headlights and get closer, you definitely get good details as you get closer to them. But this thing was completely black. There was no details as I got closer. It was a solid black, like you said, blacker than black, just the outline of it until I got closer. And then it went from, a gigantic dog, which I almost want to say was sitting, of course, I'm in a semi 8 feet in the air. But this thing, it almost looked like it was, when sitting on its haunches, was 4 feet tall, and then morphing into that ball as I got closer. And it looked like it was trying to turn to head back into the farmer's yard as I drove by. But like I said, I only had about 5 seconds to see it as it did this. Did
you get any weird feelings when you saw it? Or even when it was starting to morph from the dog into the ball on legs?
I'm going to have to say I didn't. It was more my brain was going through the kind of the checklist. Okay, is this an animal? Oh crap, it's getting up. Please don't run out in front of me. Check to see if I need to swerve if this thing comes at me. Like, that's not a dog. It's changing. What the heck is that? Like, okay, keep on driving. Go through my mental list as I went by. It just happened so fast. I really couldn't say that I remembered anything.
So, and forgive me for asking this, but it just popped into my head because I'm thinking of the shape of this thing. Because I know that we're going to talk about some possible ET stuff, right? Is there any way that you would categorize that thing as an owl shape? No,
I want to say I remember it more as canine, or, when I first saw it.
But the morphing, though, like once it's the ball on the legs, is there any way that you could go, oh gosh, well maybe that was a massive owl? I mean, you know where I'm going with that because a lot of people tie in owls with the ET stuff.
It was too big of, it was like a 3-foot ball on the leg. So, if it was an owl, it was definitely a very big bloated owl. And I didn't notice, if it was an owl spreading its wings out. I didn't notice any wings because it looked like a solid round ball on top of legs. And I have seen plenty of owls on the side of the road just standing there or suddenly flying in front of me. I mean, I've even had one hit me in the side of the door as I've been driving when it misjudged the distance. And that scared the crap out of me that night.
Yeah, it's just a lot of people claim that, some of the screen memory stuff will be an owl. And it's not always a regular size owl. Sometimes people will report like a massive owl. So that's what made me wonder if that's what it might be. But I mean, that's a stretch, because we're trying to take one weird thing and cover it with another weird thing, right? But what an interesting thing to see, and that it was a one-off. But like you said, you drive that route every single night, so it would be weird if, I don't know, I just don't know how to explain that one. A big dog is one thing, and then the other thing is something separate, that if that was all you saw was one thing or the other, you might be able to explain it away a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So... all right, so we covered the thing in the farmer's driveway. I was very interested to hear that. And so what's the next thing for you? Because that was back in 2015, right?
Correct. Well, I guess the next thing that could be classified maybe as extraterrestrial, because some of these, like I said, some of them I didn't know what to classify them when they happened. It wasn't until later on, as I was listening to your podcast or a few others, and I get to think back at some of these encounters. Like, I get to think back, well, maybe that wasn't what I originally thought. Maybe that would fall more into this category. But I think in one of the emails I sent you one, and this one actually happened to me twice in two different apartments, where, and I wrote it off as a dream. And it wasn't until I started listening to Coast to Coast that made me remember back, like, wait a minute, that sounds something similar to a dream I had. And then it made me think, maybe that wasn't a dream. And it was, I think it's an email where I sent you where I kind of awoke, or was in a dreamlike state where I was floating above my bed. And this one happened to me during the day, or when I was sleeping during the day. Because I remember the room was very well lit, and what made it stand out was, one, the room was very well detailed, which made it a lot different from any of my normal dreams that I have. Because I mean, it was down to almost exact detail of how my bedroom was at that time, to even how I had my clothes I had just taken out of the dryer and then left in the hamper or the laundry basket, and then put at the foot of my bed to put away later. A detail that probably I wouldn't have normally had in the dream. And also, while I was floating in kind of like a dreamlike state, I thought, oh, cool, I'm having a flying dream. And that's something I have never thought of in any dream where I was flying. I never thought, oh, this is a dream, I'm flying. But as I was floating there, just kind of looking around my room, I don't know how long that happened. And I kind of remember blacking out and then waking up laying on my bed. And I was laying on my right side, and I had my right arm kind of extended with my hand and part of the arm hanging over the edge of the bed. And had that kind of same dreamlike state of mind, and just kind of looking around the room. And I looked, but just my attention was drawn to my hand. And as I looked at it, a gray hand reached up from the side of my bed and grabbed my wrist, which of course freaks me out, which caused me to jerk my hand and slap my face, which either woke me up or broke me out of the trance, because the next thing I knew, I had my hand in my face. I was laying in the exact same position as I was in the dream, and everything that I had in the dream, like the light level, the way the room was laid out, was exactly the same, except, there was no gray hand poking up over the edge of my bed. But I was kind of freaking out, like, was that a dream? What was going on? And of course, I was laying there just waiting to see, okay, was I dreaming? Did something actually grab me? And waiting to see if something came up over the side of my bed. And I just laid there for a few minutes until I got the courage to actually crawl over the edge and poke my head over, but there was nothing there. And at that time, and this was, I think, in August of 2015, before I had seen that shadow a dog on my route.
Mm-hmm.
I just chalked this all up, that one up to, okay, I just had some weird, funky dream and just kind of went back to sleep. The second time that happened, I was in another apartment, which actually is the one right next door to that other one, the previous one. I had to move apartments just because the one I was in was getting sold, and the one next door became available just by timing wise. And they're the exact same apartments, except the layouts just flipped. And it was almost the exact same thing happened where I'm sleeping in the day and, I awake floating above my bed and the same thing, like, oh, I'm having a flying dream, hover above it for a few minutes. And then when I black out and wake up, I'm laying on my bed. But this time, the setup's different. This time I'm facing the wall. And as I'm laying there, I find that I can't move. I have the sleep paralysis, which at first is kind of freaking me out. I'm trying to wake up, trying to move. Like, okay, let's move. Can't move. Okay, let's try to work on move a finger. And as I'm doing that, I get this mental image in my head of my bedroom, and standing in the doorway to the bathroom is a new shadow person, not the lanky, skinny one that has been visiting at night. And this is the first time that this one has ever visited me. It's and then this one's more of a figure almost wearing a hooded cloak is the best way I could describe it. I never got to see what was under the cloak, but it was standing in the doorway. And when I got that image, it's like, oh, okay, I want to turn over. I want to see this thing. But as I was trying to move, I heard something in my head tell me, lie still, pretend to be asleep, so they won't hurt you. And of course, my first thought was, did I just think that or say that in my head? Or did something else? Because, why would I think that?
Right.
And I kind of doubled my effort to try to move. And I don't know how long I was like that before I could finally move. But as I was still in the paralysis, I remember hearing kind of a swishing sound. And it felt like whatever the shadow person was walking from the doorway to my bathroom towards the doorway to my bedroom. And when I finally could move, I turned over, looked, couldn't see anything in the room. And again, I just chalked it up like, okay, I must have had another weird dream, the paralysis, whatever, and went back to sleep. And that night when I got up for work and got out of bed and started moving around, and I put my slippers on and started moving around on the carpet, my slippers on my feet, I started when I was moving around, the noise that I was making on the carpet perked something up. It's like, wait a minute. And I started just dragging my foot on the ground. Like, that's the same noise I was hearing when I was in bed and couldn't move.
Mm.
And when I thought that I heard that thing leave the room.
Well, that's
the
creepy.
Kind of step drag sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought so too. Like maybe that was a little bit more than a dream. And from then I kind of was having a combination of the nighttime visitor, which almost seemed to be more aggressive, and the daytime one, which I almost say was more passive. But the daytime was the one that every time I'd had it visit me, I'd get that same thought, lie still, pretend to be asleep so that they or it won't harm you.
Mm.
But the night one never would speak, but it would be more aggressive. There were times when I would wake up and feel that it was there, and there were times where I almost felt like it was trying to put me back to sleep, where I would wake up, and it was. I've only been put to sleep with anesthesia once for surgery, so I kind of know how that feels coming out of it, real groggy. But that's how it felt some nights when I would wake up. And it's like I'd wake up and almost fully awake, and then it suddenly felt like something was hitting me to put me back to sleep, and I was fighting to wake up
mm-hmm.
and go back to sleep at the same time.
So how about, because some of the other things that you've brought up is hearing clicking or popping noises at night. Or is that in tandem with seeing these things?
That was after they'd stopped showing up. But there is one last time, I guess before we get to that, one last time with the daytime shadow person that I had the sleep paralysis and they showed up. They weren't in their normal spot in the bathroom door. They were over by the bedroom door where there's a mirror, and I could hear something almost like a whispering, like it was talking to something that wasn't in the room with them or me. And as I was laying there, I have sleep apnea, so I have a CPAP machine that I sleep with. So I was, trying to, like, okay, I'm hearing some whispering or some other noise in the room that's not normally there. And as I was doing that, I didn't realize I was holding my breath, because all of a sudden I heard this very loud, not like someone was yelling, but like a very strong command in my mind that just suddenly said, breathe. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm holding my breath. And I took a very large, inhale. And it was right after I did that shadow person left. And that was like one of the last times that they had visited me. Mm. And now I guess go on the clicking and popping. Yeah, that was, in 2000, I'm trying to remember my dates, because unfortunately some of these I didn't write down. So it's like, okay, I'm trying to remember back. Because I think it was 2018, January, everything stopped, and almost for a year I had no activity. And then starting in 19, stuff started up again.
Brian, why do you think, sorry, before you go on, why do you think that is? Okay. Did anything change that you can, mark down as, okay, this is what changed at that point to give you that year of a break?
No, nothing that I can say, but I've known that this has happened in the past, where things will go on where, like sometimes they'll go away for a few months to like almost six months. And one of the weird things that I found, and like I said, sometimes I joke that I'm very dense-headed, so sometimes it takes me a while to realize things, that all my encounters only happen when I'm alone. That, no one's sleeping in the same bed or same room as me. I have no one next door, or even in the same apartment or house as me. Because the times that when I was worked, the 3 years I was in the North Dakota oil field, I had nothing going on during then. And the few times when I've had a roommate, when I was rooming with my friends in Billings, Montana, I had no activity. But when I'm by myself, that's when I seem to have, having some sort of activity. Mm-hmm. Right. And it just seems to be random, because and I have no idea what brings it on or what puts it away. Because I pretty much do the same thing, go to work every night, come home, pretty set routine.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So yeah, keep going with, you're going to talk about the clicking and the popping.
Yeah, because that started, 2019. And that was happening, I think, mainly at nighttime, when I would sleep at nighttime, usually like on the weekends, and very rarely during the daytime, but I would start hearing, or something that would wake me up, and I'd hear like 3 or 4 clicks, or the same 3 or 4 pops. And it was happening in places in the room. And I would get up sometimes and investigate, like, okay, what's causing this noise? And because I tried some of this stuff, I tried to figure out, okay, is this something that, is the fan in my room blowing something to cause this clicking sound? Is it, something that's just, bumping against something? And some of it I could, where it was coming from, there was nothing over there that should be causing it. And it was happening in different spots in the room. So it was like, okay, it's, it's in this corner this night or at this time. And then maybe a couple hours later, it would be over in the other side of the room, clicking and, the clicking and popping sound, like something had moved and is now over in that position, but I could never see or find anything.
But are you definitely asleep and then you wake up to this? Or, are you awake and then you hear all 3 of the clicking and popping?
I'm definitely asleep. And then like the first one may wake me up, because I sleep kind of weird. With my CPAP, I actually wake up, even though I sleep better with it. I wake up a lot of the time at night to roll over, because with my mask, I don't know why, and the doctors don't know why either, but I'll actually wake up, roll over, readjust my mask and the hose, and then go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm waking up because I can remember it. And I joke that I'm a heavy, light sleeper. You can run a freight train through my bedroom and I'll sleep through that. But if you drop a pin, that wakes me up. Because when I visit my friend in Billings, he'll sometimes send his little girl in to wake me up. And as soon as she opens the door and she's being as quiet as she can to sneak in, I'll hear that and that wakes me up. And I'll just pretend to still be asleep, just so that when she gets close, I can jump her and play with her and scare her and do that stuff. But because I sleep with a fan blowing on me, so I have that noise constantly on me. So there's a lot of, if anything can make any noise in the room, I can hear that.
Right. So the clicking stands out to you.
Yeah.
So how about this one? Because this is something else that you put in your email, is you have felt something pulling the covers off, and you actually felt resistance when you tried to basically fight with it to pull them back up.
Yeah, that one was a new one that only happened a few weeks ago. And that one, I was in kind of that weird half awake, half asleep drug state. I don't know what better way to call it, but I was feeling like I was being pressed into the bed, and it felt like the covers were being pulled off my bed, off to the side into the room. And as I tried to grab them and pull them back onto me, it felt like something was pulling on them. And I had to pull a couple times to actually pull them back up onto me. It felt like either something was, like on the floor pulling on them on the sheets.
That would
not
not
just
be
didn't
cool.
want to let go as I pull.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that. That's not nice of anything to do that. Aren't you kind of hoping that it's just a dream, that it's not a real thing going on?
That one, I hope so. Because I know one of them that I didn't tell you or send you about to kind of give you a little surprise. I know back in August of last year, I had the similar situation where I kind of was I woke up or was half awake, and I know it was kind of that same half asleep, half awake state, laying on my bed. And as I was laying there, as my fan was blowing on me, it shut itself off for a second and came back on, or as though something had walked behind it, blocking the airflow.
Mm.
And I know it wasn't a power outage because I still had airflow from my CPAP machine. And it's like, okay, something just walks in front or behind the fan. And I tried to sit up in bed and instantly felt pressure or something pushing on me. And it wasn't a sleep paralysis because I could actually move a few inches underneath the sheets, but it was like something was holding me down, like some sort of force was, I don't want to say force field, but it was like a force was over my whole body, preventing me from moving more than like an inch or two. I was fighting and trying to get up, and I can't remember if I could open my eyes and look, or if I did that for a few minutes, but then I think I just blacked back out and went to sleep. But it was like I knew something was in the room, something had gone behind the fan because I could hear it, and then it stopped blowing for like 2 seconds and then started up, as if something had just blocked the airflow.
So I know that I want to cover for sure, because like I mentioned the drawing, and as long as it's okay with you, I will put that in the show notes for everybody. But the shadow cat or the ghost cat, I'm not sure what we would label that, but I definitely want to talk about that guy.
Yeah. You could use that as posted in the show notes.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, welcome. Yeah. That one is kind of an interesting one because that one I actually say or think that I'm having more physical contact with it, or it's physically interacting with me than any of the shadow people have. And I know that it showed up, I can't remember the exact date, sometime last year. And it was very weird because it was in one of those weird, I almost want to say dream state where I was, in bed, and I actually kind of grabbed it in my sleep and I grabbed it by its lower jaw and actually was having a tug of war kind of fight with it as it was trying to get away. Because I know one thing that's unique with me in my dreams is I don't feel anything. I can like see and hear things. It's like I'm playing a video game, but I don't feel anything. And when I do, it's very rare. But I definitely remember feeling its lower canines biting into my hand as I grabbed it. And when I woke up, I actually had my hand up in the air, gripped around something, and I could still feel where its canines had embedded into my hand. And it was one of those, it was like my floating dream where everything in the half dream state was perfectly, all the details in the room were perfect. So it was kind of weird the way that the first interaction was. It was like, it was on the bed, I grabbed it, we struggled for a little bit, and then when I fully woke up, it seemed to have just vanished.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a week later that I just had this weird thought in my head that, well, let me try talking to this thing. And this is the first time I've ever thought about doing that with these things. And I first apologized to it if I had harmed it or hurt it. I didn't mean to do that. And that if it meant me no harm, it would be welcome here in my, in my apartment, in my home. But if it did mean me any harm, I asked it to leave. And as I was falling asleep, I felt something. The way I was kind of laying, I had my left hand kind of stretched out a little bit, with it kind of cupped down, and I felt something kind of nuzzle underneath it and flick my hand up, kind of like how an animal will flick your hand if they want you to pet them or get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I first thought, okay, maybe I just had a hand spasm, which I've never had that happen before, and that kind of woke me up. It's like, okay, what's going on? So as I'm laying there, I have it happen two more times to my hand. So I was like, okay, maybe that was the shadow animal. And so I kind of gave it the name, Shadow Cat, and just, is that you, Shadow Cat? I didn't get any response from it, but I have felt it from time to time, because I will just say, good night, Shadow Cat, as I'm going to bed. And I have felt something get on the bed or jump off the bed and shake it, and that'll sometimes wake me up. Or as I said, something get on the bed and move around around my legs as I'm laying there, and I'll have not moved at all, and it just feels like an animal is moving, like a small animal. Or if you have anyone who has a dog or cat and lets them get up on the bed, that's what it feels like. Something's walking down there.
Mm-hmm.
And from time to time, I'll look down there and I won't see anything or see any of the covers moving, but that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think I would like anything to jump on my bed, especially when you're like, I don't have a cat or I don't have a little dog. It's not cool.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's cool that it doesn't bother you very much, but how many times have you seen that guy?
Sorry, what was that?
How many times have you seen it?
I've only seen it the first time when I grabbed it. After that, it's always been more getting on the bed. Though I just remembered, I think it was a few weeks after it did the hand flick, I was sleeping, and the way that I have my CPAP on my nightstand, I have my phone sitting on top of it, and I believe my phone went up, like I got a phone call, which woke me up. And I remember seeing, as I kind of got up to look at it, I remember seeing my phone suddenly fly off my CPAP machine parallel to my bed, which first freaked me out because I've accidentally gotten the power cord hooked into my air hose and knocked it off and dropped it into something and cracked the screen. So I get up real fast, and the next thing I see is my CPAP machine fly the same direction.
Mm.
And as I'm quickly getting out of bed to check everything and look at it, I realize as I'm sitting back down, I have a distilled jug of water that sits in like the bottom shelf of the nightstand. I couldn't see that as I was getting up out of bed. But when I got everything put back on the nightstand, I could see it perfectly there. And that, first was doing the head scratching, like, okay, maybe I just, half asleep, didn't notice. So I just started moving around. Okay, let me lay back down, get up. Okay, I can see the jug. Sit on the bed. I can see the jug. So the only thing I could think of is the shadow cat was down there at the bottom of the bed, and I had startled it with the phone call and me getting up, and when it maybe moved away, it was blocking my view of that jug, because I could only see like the very top part of it, because everything else was completely blacked out until until I got everything cleaned up and situated a few minutes later, and then I could see the milk jug completely clear. And this was a little bit later in the evening, so the room was a little bit darker, and the white milk jug stood out almost like a beacon in that dark room.
Right. Sorry, now I have a lawnmower out in front of the house, so it figures it never fails, I swear. Yeah, so if there's extra background noise, that's what that is. So besides, I'm just trying to kind of look at it from the big picture here. Besides whatever in the world that was in the driveway at the farmer's house, is there any other activity that you've had that you experienced while, like fully awake?
I think that's all of the fully awake.
No, and that's okay if it is. It's, it's not always the easiest thing to remember when you have a lot of stuff going on. But, and again, just looking at the big picture, because you almost have you've got poltergeist activity, like you said, possible ET activity. You've got shadow people and animals. Do you think it is, in fact, all connected?
I'm going to say, over time, I want to say I think it is connected somehow. How it's connected, I'm not sure. Because at first I thought it might have all been its own individual thing. Because I almost want to say I think the shadow people might fall not into the paranormal side, but maybe a little bit more into the extraterrestrial side. But that's just me feeling that way.
Right. Have you ever thought why you?
Sometimes.
Have you ever got any further down the road as to answering that?
I've thought about that. One time I thought about trying to get like a camera for my bedroom, though I wasn't sure exactly how to go about what one to get, because it'd have to be something that had night vision, or that'd be good to be able to record both day and night, or get a recorder that maybe I could try to put in the room, because I know now I'm actually getting some audible sounds that have been waking me up.
And what is that? What are those sounds like? Besides like the clicking, the popping, things like that?
Yeah, they're a bit different, and they've been different every time. Because at one time it was, I almost want to say it was almost like a mechanical female voice saying, I couldn't tell what she was saying, but it was almost like 2-syllable word or 2 words. And I've noted that was always happening around 1:30 at night, or 1:30 a.m. There was that one. There was a banging sound in my master bathroom off the bedroom, which when I did an investigation in the morning, it sounded like the medicine cabinet door being closed real forcefully. Another one was, and this one sounded like a cat hissing, and that one was right next to my bed. And then another one was one of something pounding on my bedroom door, like trying to push the door open without turning the knob.
Now, did you get up and inspect that situation?
That one did get me up out of bed, and I looked around for it.
But
I checked the apartment.
Nothing out of place there?
No, nothing I could see, because it was like, I think it was like 2 or 3 loud bangs on the door, or pushes against the door real hard. That definitely startled me. Like, okay, was that just someone trying to get in the door, or what was that?
So these are all, what you're mentioning now are quite recent events, right?
Yeah, that one happened like in February going into March. And it was like one of those was like every weekend when I was sleeping at night.
Which you don't usually do, right? Obviously you work
just
at
sometimes
night, so.
Just sometimes on the weekend I'll change up a little bit, stay up a little later, and just sleep whenever I get tired.
Right.
Yeah, because last night I actually had another audible encounter or incident, which I first thought it was the fire alarm going off with a low battery, but it first had 2 beeps in my bathroom, which there's no fire alarm in there. And then I don't know how much later it was, because I went back, kind of laying in bed, thought it was, like I said, I heard the first one, which woke me up, and I was like, okay, that was a noise. Let's lay here and see if we hear anything. And then I think like 30 seconds or a minute later, I heard a second beep, and I was like, okay, that's maybe the fire alarm, or no, sorry, smoke detector, I mean. And then I didn't hear it again, which was, odd. And then then it made me think, well, why is it coming from the bathroom? But since I didn't hear it again, I fell back to sleep. And then I heard it again, but this time coming from the actual smoke detector, but it only beeped once. And the first time I actually looked at the clock and saw that it happened at 2:30, but then I thought about it, like, wait a minute, if I do daylight savings, roll the clock back, that's 1:30, which was when it was happening back in February.
Yeah, so it does tend to do it at the same times. A lot of these things seems to do the same thing, right?
Yeah. It just seems to be a different audible sound.
Right.
But around the same time. But it took a month off between the last batch.
I wonder what the next round will be, right? What the next round of sounds will be there at your place, because it certainly seems to keep going on the same schedule. Well, Bryan, is there anything else you wanted to share before we sign off here?
I think that's about it that I can think of.
I mean, I want you to keep in contact with me. I mean, you've been very good at doing that, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kind of giving me the pokes and prods and like, hey, remember me? I'm coming on to talk to you. But keep me in the loop with what's going on there. Send me some, follow-up emails, because, things, invading homes is always the thing. I'm like, nope, I don't want to do that. I don't want to experience that. It wouldn't be fun. No matter how much of it is something actually, in the room, or just even a perception of something can be very terrifying, right?
Oh yeah.
Well,
one I just thought of too, because I just remembered that was in February I actually saw something through one of my fans, some sort of shadow thing moving, and that's when I was fully awake, and I was actually sitting on the edge of my bed, and it was one of the stand-up fans in the middle of the stands on a pole. Like I say, this one I wasn't running, and I saw something dark move through the screen, or behind the screen in the bedroom. And was it human shaped then? It was all the way, like you said, stand-up fan. So did it stand above the top of it? From what I could tell, because I saw just like maybe a quarter of it, as though like it stepped from behind it. But it was like we said, it's like darker than dark, just the black edge of it stepping out. And I wasn't moving, and like once I saw like, head jerk, like, what was that? And again, I did the whole thing. Okay, maybe it was me moving, and doing all the moving in bed. Like, nope, I can't duplicate it. So, like, what did I just see? Well, yeah, I guess we'll see what the next month brings you, right? What kind of goodies it has in store for you. Well, yeah, Bryan, thank you so much. I appreciate you finally coming on and being patient with me. Oh, you're welcome.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, the spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.